J. Garrick, The Flash, issue 1, Jeremy Adams writing with Diego Olortegui on art. Olortegui? I don't know.
Close enough.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, obviously Adams is no stranger to writing a Flash character, but this is someone a little bit different. It starts with a flashback to 1963, which I guess is when the Golden Age happened now. There's the 60s.
I mean, you have to take it with the age of her, right? She's supposed to be about 12. So her being born post-World War II makes a lot of sense, right? So she's born 49-ish? 50?
That'd be 51. If she's 12.
Yeah, yeah, because 63.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not an approximate thing, Matt. It's a pretty straight, clear bit of math.
Yeah, I know maths. Numbers suck. We've been over this.
I think this is just a case of we're sliding the timeline a little bit because
I don't like this because that means now the JSA is going to be heavily involved in Vietnam. Right? Like, I don't need this. It's World War II or bust. I don't like the fact that we're putting our Golden Age characters so close now, right? Because
I mean, you say that, but then we've got young Robin in World's Finest having like smartphones and talking about
I don't
TikTok
like that
trends.
Either.
So
that's about
like,
equal.
it makes sense if Silver Age Robin has got smartphones, then it makes sense that the Golden Age characters are in the 60s and 70s now instead of the 30s and 40s.
Ugh, I'm gonna throw up.
You're an old man, Matt. Accept
I don't like it. I know. I don't like it.
So it's 1963, and it's Jay and the Boom, as we'll call Judy, are rescuing a dam that's been lined up to explode. The villains kidnapped Joan, Jay's wife, and so Jay's got this big thing where he tries to get all the bombs. It's a fun page with him darting around the dam. It's like the Hoover Dam. It's this big, flat dam, and he gets in, he does a whole thing where he has to, he misses one stick of dynamite, so there is one hole that gets made, and he has to kind of fuse the concrete together and sort of plug it as best he can, just so it'll hold for a bit until he can come back and make it more permanent. And he runs in, but when he comes in and he says, "Where's Judy?" Or the wife says, "Where's Judy?" He's like, "Judy? Who are you talking about?"
We can't have kids. We've been over this.
Yeah. So this is the moment where she's been erased from time. We see actually come back to this later in the issue and see the exact moment, but this is the general moment where she disappeared. Cut to present day, and it's 75-year-old Joan seeing Judy again for the first time. And this is where we get Judy's narration talking about how it's weird because all these things have changed. Everyone's so much older. The world's changed so much. And, she left in the early 60s, because it does this great panel where you see, like, Bart's been using her old bedroom. So you see, like, a computer and, like, stuff all over the floor. And then you see her bedroom from the 60s, and it's, like, the same room, but it's, like, empty.
There's nothing. Yeah. And that's just how it was. It was just there was less things to do. Yeah. Or not to do, but less things to, like, hold and collect. And, Plus, Bart, his name is Impulse. I feel like he's a lot like me, where he's just buying stuff to have it,
Sure.
Yeah.
He's got a computer and he's got a TV with a video game console by the looks of it. He's living life like a teenage boy, like, seriously.
Yep.
So she's a bit overwhelmed with all this. Things are so different, and they give her some time, and she hears on the news that there's a villain up to stuff outside, so she speeds off. He's like, "You know what? Everything else feels weird. I don't feel like I'm home the way that I thought I would, but I can still be the Boom. I can still go be a superhero." So sure enough, she runs off, and I actually like this moment because Joan comes to give her some, like, cookies or something, and she gets really scared that she's missing. And of course she's scared. She disappeared once before and was gone for decades. They basically, they didn't even declare her dead. She literally got wiped from their memories.
She didn't exist, right? This is like when Wally came back, right? Now everyone has the memories, right? So now she has to go through that feeling again that she's missing.
But this is more like Dawn from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that she never existed originally. This is actually a new creation that's been retconned into existence. So anyway, so she speeds off and she stops a bunch of villains. But then Jay shows up to, like, sort of finish the bad guys off, and is like, "Hey, we need to talk. Like, you scared the shit out of your mum with disappearing like that." So they have a bit of a debate about it, and then this is when it flashes back to seeing, the other side of what happened, which was Judy going in to fight the villain when her mum was kidnapped, and we see that the villain who's going on about the greater good, like one of the bad guys from Hot Fuzz, the greater good, he's got all these nefarious plans, and he seems to like be aware, like so Judy disappears like she's in like a Marvel movie, like getting snapped, and he's watching from the shadows, and he seems to be aware that she's disappeared, you know, and he's like, hey, this is my chance for a second chance, no matter how long it takes. So it really sets up that this bad guy, whose name I'm looking for in the book because I can't remember,
it's Dr. something, right?
Elemental, Dr. Elemental.
Yeah,
there you go. So yeah, he seems like he's going to be the villain of the story, and what he's been doing for all these years, with Judy gone, if he's not been interacting with the heroes, who knows? But this is what the book ends on. It ends at the end of this flashback where it's the other side of Judy disappearing. So what did you think of this book? I just kind of went through the whole plot.
No, yeah, I liked it a lot. It's Adam's doing Flash, which it feels like a warm hug for me, right? And just the whole idea of Joan and Jay having to come to terms with the fact that they didn't have a daughter, now they do have a daughter. Now they're older, but they know what it's like to raise a kid in, their later life because of Bart, so the ties there. And then just the idea of this Dr. Elemental and like who's he going to end up being to the Flash family. Yeah,
it feels very pulpy. And they notably kind of like obscure his face, and Judy says, I've seen you before she disappears. So I wonder who this turns out to be from the history of the Flash stuff. So we'll see.
So but no, I love it. It's just all this stuff with the Flash family again. It's one of those books that when the more characters there are to kind of lean on, I feel the better it comes off. So just this whole idea when they mentioned that Bart's off with Max on some other adventure, so they have room now to deal with Judy, and they look at the picture of the Flash family and how big it's grown now, right? Like,
which is partly what makes her feel alienated, is that hey, when I was here before, it was just my parents and me,
just us.
And now I look at this photo and there's Bart and Wally and Barry and Avery and Linda and everyone else who's involved.
She doesn't know about Barry and the fact that let's say that she did know Jesse Quick and Liberty Bell, doesn't know that they had a daughter that became both Jesse Quick and Liberty Bell. Like there's all this whole big gap that she has to come up with. And I kind of like this, character out of time. It almost is an update of Impulse, just inverted, right? Because she comes from the past, she's in the future. He's from the future, he comes, to the past.
Which is easier to deal with from a narrative point of view, because you don't have to have this character who knows like all these things, or they should know a bunch of things about the future. So it's a character who we know more than, and hopefully, and I think so far she does seem quite likable. She, all of her like worries and fears make enough sense, and kind of the awkward situation of these two old people now suddenly being parents to someone who they should have been parents to her at this age about 30 years ago. More than that even, because it's
60 years ago.
I mean, if it's 2023 in DC Universe right now, then it's ages ago. Which actually means that these two are actually too old. Like, they shouldn't be alive anymore. Like, if you think about what age they had Judy at, even if they had her at, like, 18, that would mean...
Let's say that Jay was 22 going into World War II, which means he was born in the 1920s. He's easily supposed to be 100 years old.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I'm just thinking, let's just say he had Judy at 18. She's 12 in 1963. That means that he's 30 in 1963, plus the 60 years means that he's at least 90. So even by my more generous count, he's 90.
So, but with the Flash, you can always just say, oh, Speed Force, whatever.
What about Joan?
Well, I remember reading a thing in one of the JSAs that because she was married to him, like the aura...
This is bullshit. This is such, like, the headcanon bullshit.
No, it wasn't headcanon. It was in...
I get that someone actually wrote it into a comic, but it's still, it doesn't matter, it was written, it's still headcanon bullshit.
Even in the early 2000s, we were looking at how old the Justice Society was, right? Like, and that was 20 years ago.
But they were all like frozen in time or something, right? That was like part of the content. I mean, which I guess maybe is the case here, but again, is Joan frozen in time as well?
No, because she shouldn't have been, because she wasn't there. Yeah.
It's
Speed Force, bro. We don't have to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy the characters are around. I just, if anything, now that we're talking about it, I'm like, you know what, 1963 is actually too far back for this to make sense. If you think about what age they must have been to have a 12-year-old kid in 1963, if anything, this should have been probably 1983, which is really scary.
Don't like that.
Matt,
but just
technically, the timeline based on everything, I'm saying that when you were born, technically is now the golden age in DC Comics.
I like it. So
that's pretty fun.
But yeah, it's one of those just things too. Like I feel like John's and his love of the Justice Society has kind of screwed up the timeline. But there'll be ways to fix that. I'm not that worried, just as long as the stories are there. And Flash. I always equate Flash stories with a lot of heart. So as long as the heart's there, and I trust Adams to deliver on this, and also Flash characters add themselves to like the Rip Hunter time police type thing too. So this ends with Judy going through time to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen, and she becomes one of the Time Masters or the Time Hunters, whatever they're called. That's a nice place where we can still.
That's a really bold prediction.
I'm just saying,
just remember this ends, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying if that were to go, because whatever, then we don't have to worry about the timey-wiminess of it, because I'm thinking of all the other Justice Society kids that had come back. This is the first one that we're really interacting with, to have to think about when they were. I mean,
I suspect it's the only one we're really going to interact with for the most part. But it's a solid pick because we get to have Jay focus for a change, and Judy is kind of the central character, which is fun because she's new, and we can explore things from a different perspective. Yeah. So
and I like how unconventional her name is too, because they're the Flash and the Boom. So that kind of, it also goes in with that era of heroes, right? Where you got like the atomic bomb, that was the Flash and the Boom. And people would, out here at least, would go and watch atomic bombs getting detonated. So it kind of fits in with that hokiness of that time era.
The art is solid. I think the stuff early on with the dam and Jay running around all looks quite fun. The various, I think it does a decent job with the facial expressions and like selling the moments that are emotional. It's like, it's not as good as some of the greater examples of it, but I think it goes beyond just being like house style, I think, which is nice.
Yeah, well, and it fits with what we've seen in the Flash too, with all the different artists. It's very flowy. It's got a kind of a bounce to the art, almost like a cartoony quality in parts, which I think matches the Flash very well.
Yeah, well, I think because we're dealing with the Golden Age characters, kind of, even though we're not in the Golden Age anymore, is a bit of pulpiness doesn't hurt, and I think certainly Dr. Elemental feels very pulpy. So I'm curious to see how this develops next issue. And maybe we'll see Judy meet some of the other speedsters next issue. That could be fun if we do that. So what are you rating J. Garrick the Flash issue 1?
I'm rating this an 8.5. I really enjoyed it.
If anything, I feel like the name should be Judy Garrick the Flash issue 1 or the Boom issue 1, but I think it's because they're like, no, that won't sell as well as J. Garrick the Flash. Because she is the main character so far, let's be honest.
If I can remember, this is the first time I remember a J. Garrick main title, right? I don't think he's really had a solo book.
Not that I can remember.
Some time.
I'll give this an 8 for me. I think it's just a solid 8. I really enjoyed learning about this new character, who we got a bit of as in the Stargirl mini, of course, but this was a bit more focus. So I'm digging it.